You ever just had a thought in life like, hey, something needs to change? But the challenge that you have is that you don't know exactly what it is that needs to change or when to do it. But the fact of the matter is that something just needs to change. Well, if you've ever had that thought, hey, you're in the right place today. Let's pause for a second. And today I want to talk about a method that I use that has significantly changed my life. Without using this method, it wouldn't have encouraged me to make the biggest decision of my life to move from South Carolina all the way up to the DMV. So let's pause for a second. Today, I want to talk about the gauge method. Welcome to the Pause Pod. Well, welcome to the Pause Pod, and I'm David. And recently, I just hit the pause button in life, moving to a new city with a new job to take on this new adventure. And essentially, it all boiled down to one thing. I just asked myself a simple question: am I happy with life? You see, it's that fact of taking ownership of who you are and what you're doing in life. That's the essence of the Pause Pod, because every once in a while, you got to just slow down, pause, take a look at where you are and evaluate and ask yourself, hey, is this is where I need to be? Is this is where I want to be? And the answer is no. It's always good to course correct because you can always start over. Now, the thing about the reset or the refresh in life is that the reality is it's going to look different. For me, I had the opportunity to apply for a new job, get a new job, leave everything I had behind in South Carolina and start over. But that's not the reality for everybody. There's people who has families. There's people who have significant roots that are just laid down that they can't pick everything up and leave, and I understand that. But when it comes to hitting that reset button in life, it can change and you can make changes depending on maybe you want to start those relationships differently. So how are you treating your wife? Can you treat your wife differently? How are we looking at finances? How are we taking care of our bodies? How are we encouraging ourselves to take that next step in life? There's so many different things that we can look at that we can actually just take a pause, reset, ask ourselves how we're doing, and then make the change. So, what I want to do today is I want to talk about the gauge method. I want to show you how to use the gauge method. I want to answer a very important question I think we all have and we all face. When is the perfect time to start over? The gauge method is when you look at your life in the big picture. I like to say a 30,000-foot view, and you break your life into five major categories. Now, for most people, they break their life into three categories: mental, physical, and spiritual. But my mentor, he challenged me to break them into five just because, based on some things that I was doing in life, there were some other categories that I need to take into consideration. And I'll talk about those whenever we dive into the five. But these were the five categories that my mentor challenged me to break it in. Five categories: personal, spiritual, financial, educational, vocational, or your job. Now, let's just take a look at the personal aspect when it comes to the five gauges. Personal aspect, whenever how it was broken down to me, is that, hey, what are you doing for your personal growth and your relational growth? So, in personal growth, what are you doing with your self improvement? Are you trying to take that next step, whether it's being a better communicator, whether it's trying to work on your own health? How are you doing personally? Relationally, how you doing with your family? For some of us that are single, what's our dating life look like? Yes, dating life does matter. Now, next we have the spiritual aspect, and it's really just asking yourself, like, how are you growing in your faith? What you believe in? How are you walking more with the Lord? For me, I'm a Christian, so I always looked at it Romans 12, 1 through 2. Am I looking more like Jesus? And the thing is that based on how that walk would look, that would let me know how I was doing spiritually. After spiritually, we have financially. And when it comes to, you can look at, hey, how's my savings account? Is this the year that I want to start that LLC, get that passive income, or is this the year that I want to destroy or just attack debt? So financially, are you setting goals? Like, how are you doing? After financially, we can look down and break this to education. Educationally, are there certificates that you want to take? Do you want to like hop into Toastmasters? Do you want to work on getting any of those Microsoft or Google search? Do you want to get into data analytics? There's so many different ways to look at, but the question is, educationally, how are you doing? Next, we have vocational. Now, I know you said education. It just by the way how I described educational, that could also mean going and getting your master's degree. But now we have vocational in our jobs. How are we doing in our jobs? Are we happy with our jobs? Is this the step, or is this the job that I can see myself doing for the next 5 years? Am I happy with my job? Do you get out of your car every single day and have to take the deep breath just to build yourself up and say, man, there's so many different ways we can look at vocational to see how we are doing in those gauges. But yeah, those are the five gauges that my mentor challenged me to look at in life: personal, spiritual, educational, vocational, financial. So those are the five gauges. Now, this is how you use it. Out of those 5 gauges, you go back and you just begin to ask yourself some tough questions. Essentially, you can ask yourself, hey, how am I doing in this gauge? Now, you rate yourself. The easiest thing to do is just a scale of 1 to 10. How am I doing? Now, it's okay to wrestle with this. And I'm just going to tell you right now, these should not be easy. These should be something that you take your time, dive into, and just really think about. Like, you need to wrestle with this. The reason being is that you're asking yourself, and in what areas do you need to make a change? So once you figure out how you're doing in this gauge, the next question is, lean in for this. How do I want to be doing in this? So you might start off with a 10, a 7, 8, 9, 10. If you're a 10, more power to you. I never got to a 10. But you can ask yourself, how am I doing? But then how I want to be doing. And that can be the line of equilibrium that really either drives you to let you know you're right where you need to be, or maybe there's some areas in your life that you need to take a look at and ask yourself, okay, how can I get from where I am to where I want to be? Take your time with this. You're gonna wrestle. I'm not even gonna lie. There's gonna be some moments where, depending on, like, for me in personal relationships, especially with some of my friends, man, I grinded so hard with my career. I grinded just in physical fitness. There were some areas that I was just grinding so hard that there were some relationships in my life that went to the wayside, and that was difficult. So yeah, there's some things that you're gonna have to be truthful with in life. But the good thing is that the things that we are truthful with when it comes to those gauges, I know everybody likes to look at a new year, new me. You can use a lot of those things and begin to set practical short-term goals that you can break down for 1 year, breaking down to 6 months, to break down to a quarter, to break down to 2 months, to break down to weekly, to something daily that you can progressively begin to make steps in each and every one of those gauges or areas that you identify that, hey, I am not where I want to be. And you can slowly begin to make that progression. I did not say perfection, progression towards getting to that point in that gauge where you're okay with. And now you're beginning to make those steps and make those changes. Because now you just hit the pause, you saw where you are, hit the reset button, and now you're beginning to develop good rhythms and good habits to get you to be where you want to be. Now, for me personally, whenever I use this gauge, the big picture for me was that this quite open and honest and transparent. When it came to where I was as far as gauges in life, my top three is that I was high. I was on a spiritual high. Financially, I was doing good. Student loans eliminated, working towards paying off a house. Like, everything was good. Educational. I just finished seminary. Spiritual, man, I'm telling you right now, I was a pastoring. I was one of the pastors at a church, getting plugged in into a church planning kind of cohort. And I mean, things were good. But you notice the two that I didn't say, that out of the five, how was I doing personally and how are I doing vocationally? Man, I was on a high on all those, on those three. But the thing is that those cups were spilling over, but there were some areas in my personal life that were a little bit challenging. How I had certain friendships and certain relationships. I mean, I'm 40 plus. I would love to get married, would love to have kids, understanding, which is, that's part of the reason why I probably try to keep myself in as best shape as I can. It's just because, yeah, I do want to have a family and understanding all that. But that's just a sidebar. Let me get back to it. But just understanding how those 5 gauges were, the simple fact that when it came to how I was looking at my personal gauges and then my vocational gauges, how low they were and how high everything else, I knew that, hey, something needed to change. Didn't want to necessarily make those changes because, I'm not gonna lie, life was good. I was good, but there were just some things that I knew that I was missing. So with that being said, when it came to wanting these personal changes and looking at certain things vocationally, I began to ask certain questions. That's when I began to make steps and do certain actions. So it's not just finding out the question, it's allowing the question to be followed up with action. And for me, that action was starting taking maybe a risk or two different at work, volunteering for an opportunity to help out in certain offices, or even sitting down with a career counselor and say, hey, this is my resume. I want to level up. What are some things you want to do? So there you have it. That's the gauge method. Break it, just looking at your life, big picture, breaking it up into small, tangible aspects, rating them, and then, from this is where I want to be, making steps to go and be that person you want to be. And then having some actionable items that you could take charge, not tomorrow, but today. And I'll tell you one thing, I wanted to work on being a better communicator, which is a personal goal. And so that's why I wanted to start this podcast. So I know this is the second episode. I know I might sound a little robotic. That's okay. I'm working on it. But trust me, by the time we get to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, each one, we're going to get a little bit better. And my goal for this one, and I'm gonna try to leave this at the end, but my goal for this one, that's my dog in the back, is that I wanted to do this without a teleprompter. So if you can watch the first one and you see it today, let me know if you could tell a difference. But hey, thank you for rocking with me. Don't forget, you always have enough time to pause, reflect. I can't wait to talk to you again. I'll let y'all. So until next time, pause. Let's talk about it. I'll see y'all later. So if you made it to the video this far, you're probably asking yourself a simple question. So when is the perfect time to make a change? To make a change, it doesn't require you to make personal changes or have yourself set up for a certain thing. To make a change, it does not set up any prerequisite. All it takes is the realization and the determination to say, hey, yes, today is the day that I want to make a change. Once you make that decision, that's the day to start making a change. So you don't have to put it on a calendar to say 6 months from now I'm going to make that change. No, do it today. So if that change is, hey, I want to be a better friend to my friends, and you know what? You can start today by just texting a friend. Sometimes you might have to plan it. Sometimes you have to be intentional when it comes to doing habits or making things part of a rhythm, something that you do daily. It's going to take a little bit of discipline to do that daily. So if it's with relationships, you might have to put a plan in your phone or text my friend daily. If it's something that you want to do physically, you might have to put that plan in your phone. Go walk today. Whatever it is, sign up for that duty, whatever it is. Even if it's financial, the way you may want to look at money, it might be wanting to do passive income. It may be wanting to have certain things in savings. Look at the big picture, ask yourself what it is that you want to do, and begin to find ways to break it down into small goals so you can start to check those off and celebrate the wins. So there you have it. That's the gauge method. Break it, just looking at your life, big picture, breaking it up into small, tangible aspects, rating them, and then from this is where I want to be, making steps to go and be that person you want to be. And then having some actionable items that you could take charge, not tomorrow, but today.